Hello, everyone. Welcome to Hyperspace on Dark Matter Radio Network. I'm your host, Solaris BlueRaven. I want to thank everybody for tuning in this evening, and a special thank you to webmaster and producer Keith Rowland. And my special guest this evening is Jay Weidner.Called by Wired Magazine, an authority on the hermetic and alchemical traditions, and erudite conspiracy hunter. Jay Weidner is a renowned author, filmmaker, and hermetic scholar. Considered to be a modern-day Indiana Jones for his ongoing worldwide quest to find clues to mankind's spiritual destiny via ancient societies and artifacts, his body of work offers great insight into the circumstances that have led to the current global crisis. He is the director of the powerful and insightful documentaries Kubrick's Odyssey, Infinity, The Ultimate Trip, and the forthcoming feature film Shasta. He is also the producer of the popular documentary films 2012, The Odyssey, and its sequel, Timewave 2013. Jay was featured in the History Channel's documentary, The Lost Book of Nostradamus, and was associate producer and featured in History Channel's special Nostradamus 2012 and also in Brad Meltzers' Decoded. He also participated in Jesse Ventura's conspiracy theory for TruTV. In addition, he is the co-author of The Mysteries of the Great Cross of Hyundai, Alchemy and the End of Time, Destiny Books, and A Monument to the End of Time with Vincent Bridges, as well as contributing writer for the book The Mystery of 2012. That sounds true. And Jay's websites are sacredmysteries.com, jayweidner.com, and shastamovie.com. And please welcome Jay to the show this evening. And Jay, how are you?
Hey, I'm good. How are you?
I'm doing great, thank you. It's a pleasure to have you on board tonight, so thank you for joining us.
I
appreciate it.
No problem.
And so let's talk about your new film, Shasta. I know this is getting ready to go live out and hit the theaters soon, so let's talk about that.
Yeah, my new movie is called Shasta, and it's Revolution of the Spirit, and it's a film about what might happen if like a savior came and tried to tell the world about what great spiritual truths and also about the bad guys without really resorting to violence and successfully overthrowing some of the evil forces on Earth. So it's kind of a wide-ranging, epic film. It's got really good music and good acting. We have Neil Donald Walsh plays Count Saint Germain, and we have it's about the telling of the 10th avatar of Vishnu, which is Vishnu is the creator in the Hindu pantheon, and he has 10 avatars that come to Earth over the time span of humanity's time on Earth. This is part of the Vedic teachings, a deep part of it. So there's been many avatars that have come and teaching humanity great truths, great spiritual truths. But so the 8th avatar was Krishna, and then the 9th avatar was the Buddha, and the 10th avatar is Kalki. And Kalki is different from all the other avatars in that he's not coming here to teach great spiritual truths. He's basically coming here to kick the ass of the people who have been ruining the world.
Yay.
And so that's what but how do you do that without resorting to violence? That was the trick of the movie. Mm-hmm. So it was a really interesting experience. It took 3.5 years of my life, and we've done a lot of showed it to a lot of people, and it's getting really quite a positive response. It's a very positive movie about humanity and our future, and it's a way out of at least shows a way out of our current predicament, or at least a relook at spiritual values, which could cause, if we do it in the right way, kind of a rethinking of our culture and our lives and what we're really doing here.
Mm-hmm, exactly, and I did see the trailer, and it's awesome. I'm looking forward to the film. So, yeah, heads up on that one for sure. So, insofar as the information goes in the screenplay, now, do you feel this is a parallel of truth? Obviously, there's some thread in there that has some kind of a connection to truth on a spiritual level.
Yeah, I tried to I went for entertainment first because I wanted it to be successful. So, what I did was I tried to put a lot of thought into how to make deep spiritual concepts easy to understand and still be entertained by them. Mm-hmm. And it's not just concepts of spiritual concepts. It's also concepts of a different view of history, So the bad guys in the movie are the archons, which are real beings taken from the Nag Hammadi text, and they, they've been written about and studied and talked about. Islam knows them as the jinns, and they're like spiritual parasites which can infect and get into human beings. And I actually try to show what it looks like to be invaded by an archon in the movie. And also, I went out of my way. I spent a lot of money, special effects wise, to show the what you might call the spiritual body, the chakra, light body, torus, aura that surrounds the human being. And I make that a central pivot point of the film, using the technology that only motion pictures and cinema can give you these days. I asked myself the question, well, if they can make, spaceships and aliens that are just out of CGI, then why don't we use this great tool of computer graphics to, evoke some spiritual principles too? So then, I went through great effort to do that, and great expense, because I wanted to make sure it was done right so people can see.
Oh yeah.
So it was a multitask kind of thing. The highest principle was entertainment, which was different from what I usually do, because when I make my documentaries, I try to cram, as much useful information into a chronological order as I possibly can, so that when you're watching it, you think that you're getting your money's worth, information-wise. But when you do a feature film, I realize that no matter what kind of great things you have to say, if you're not entertaining people, it's not going to work. And so what I really had to do is I actually shot the movie twice. I shot it once, and it was kind of preachy and pretentious a little bit, and I rewrote it over a vacation and in Mexico. I came back and I reshot it again, at least 90% of it, and and then reshaped it again and reshot it again, keep coming up with higher concepts and figuring how to move deeper into this kind of territory in a cinema fashion. And it became quite an ordeal. I'm sure I aged about 5 or 6 years in the 3.5 years I made it. I understand now when people tell me that, making a film can kill you. And
wow.
it can. So it was a tough experience. I learned a lot, of course, and my next film will be easier now for me to make.
Oh yeah, absolutely. And so obviously you filmed on location out there at Mount Shasta, right? Or no?
Yeah, we filmed in Northern California and Southern Oregon, and it even went into the lava tubes that are under Mount Shasta.
Nice. Oh, that's great. So what's your take on the lava tubes? I mean, I like them myself, but there's supposed to be an anomaly connected to lava tubes. Is that correct?
Yeah. Well, I don't know. It depends on how you look at it. Nassim Haramein, completely on his own, the physicist, completely on his own, maybe because he lives in Hawaii, which has lava tubes. He, has a theory that he has that because of the particular nature of the tube itself, and the fact that it's actually dried lava, which means that the lava was dry. This is the point where it dried up and then contracted as it cooled, and so making the lava tubes. So now you have a heavily encrusted vorticular shape that's big too. By the way, it can be 100 feet high, and with a highly mineralized crystal. And this, he contends, could act in some cases as a electromagnetic vortex, linking, creating like a Stargate. And I, completely independent, did not even hear of that theory until 2012 or 2011 maybe. I finally saw the YouTube of Nassim saying that, and I had already derived the theory that something was going on with volcanoes, especially semi-extinct volcanoes, because of the odd sightings of different creatures and flying saucers and all sorts of weird stuff. And it seems to be prevalent in every place where there is a volcano. I was in Le Puy in France, and again, it had replete with these stories of odd beings and coming down from the mountain and, you know, walking around the town, and it was just amazing, and flying saucers going into the mountain. And then when I moved to Southern Oregon, where I lived for a few years, while I was making the film, again, you know, the stories around Mount Shasta were amazing. I couldn't believe it. And then let's not forget the first UFO sighting, proclaimed UFO sighting, was at Mount Rainier in 1947. And again, you wonder, you know, what's going on. And so many stories of people telling, you know, saying that they actually saw these light ships, you know, going into the lava tubes. So then, you know, you start wondering about these lava tubes and this extremely old mountain, and how many stories, let's say, of lava tubes there might be going down from, you know, multiple eruptions over the centuries. Then you can begin to wonder about, well, gee, there might be a lot of creatures. We don't have to get fantastic. Let's just say creatures that, you know, maybe we don't see in the daytime. Nocturnal creatures who come out at night, who live down in these lava tubes, or maybe creatures that we've never seen, that we might even think are alien. Or maybe possibly humans decided to duck down there and get away from the Earth, which is the theory that I have, which is the theory that, you know, one time, and this is also in the movie, one time the Pacific Rim was really known as Lemuria, and including Hawaii, and there are these myths that are in all of these different countries, whether it be the Maori in New Zealand, or the Aborigines in Australia, or the Anu in Japan, or the Hawaiians themselves, and also the Chumash Indians of California, all speak of this Lemuria, of this time when these great boatsmen, you know, created this incredible paradise. And Mount Shasta, you know, was the place where, in the rumor was it, that they went when there was a disaster. And they went, and so if you add that story onto these lava tubes, you now have a place where they could go. And I've seen these lava tubes and been in them, and people say, oh, they're not there. And I'm like, oh, yes, they are. And they're so pervasive that we don't even know how, if you added them up by the mile, how many miles of them there are down there. No one's ever really looked.
Exactly. Well, I lived on Maui for a while, and I can tell you, yeah, Haleakala, I'm sure you've been over there. But yeah, there were a lot of stories about UFO anomalies coming in and out around Haleakala, and these men of metal, so to speak, silver. Yeah.
Absolutely. I've heard them many times. And every time that you find a place with lava tubes, you know, you find these odd things, these light ships. It's what they call. They seem like they're different than flying saucers. They seem like they're more interdimensional. And, you know, and I contend that there's not really people maybe living in these Mount Shasta or in these Mount volcanoes, but that they're, Harmon is right, they're some kind of transdimensional gateway, and certain beings are using them for that.
I tend to believe that also, and I'm sure it's about frequency too, once again.
Yes.
And also what people cannot see, I'm sure they feel nonetheless. Like I'm sure you were picking up on the vibration of these areas.
Oh, I was there. I had to spend a night. The thing about Shasta is there's really nothing there as far as people. And on the east side of Shasta, which is where I spent an entire night doing time-lapse photography of Mount Shasta with the stars, the overriding presence that not only that there was like some kind of something going on in that mountain, but that we were being watched. very carefully by something. And I mean, we're in a place where there's literally no ranches, no farms, no towns, no roads. Just go Google and look at the east side of Mount Shasta, and it's literally hundreds of miles of wilderness.
Mm-hmm. Wow.
Except for one road which exists on the east side. Strangely enough, this dirt road is called Military Road.
Mm.
So I don't know what that means.
Well, they do say that there is some sort of an underground base there. I'm not sure if that's correct or not, but I suspect that, the military likes to stake power spots.
Yeah, and I would say that if there are these things, they've probably already been examined by the military and maybe even being used by them.
Very interesting.
Yeah.
Well, let's just hope they're the good guys fighting the good fight. I mean, obviously the interdimensional beings I get are more positive, but, whenever there's a military presence, things get a little distorted, so...
Yeah, and there's more and more a military presence, so on every level. So it's whether it's military or paramilitary, and it's another thing that we should all be very, very worried about.
Yeah, I am concerned about that also, especially with the underground areas and things like that. I'm not sure if you're real familiar with My Labs or not, or did you even touch on the subject of military abductions in your book, not your book, but your movie?
No, not at all.
Okay.
I try to keep a little bit more positive, but I'm well aware of the entire military abduction ordeal.
It might make an interesting film sometime. You might want to think about that sometime down the road.
Yeah.
Or dark film.
Yeah, that would be my dark film.
Yeah, definitely. But I like the Mount Shasta thing, and of course it is a hot spot for anomalies and a power spot. And a lot of people say they've received initiations on the inner planes there. A lot of spiritual initiations have taken place out there. So I think it's a wonderful place to do any type of filming.
Yeah, and it hasn't really ever been tapped in movies, if you think about it.
Not at all.
It's kind of odd. You got this incredible place, and nobody ever makes a movie there, really?
So what attracted you to this? What sparked your interest with the area?
Well, we actually, we had made the decision to move from documentaries to features in 2008, and in 2007. We've kind of, I said, I'm finishing up these documentaries, and they're all very interesting, and I like them, but I want to, this is my real joy is to make a feature. And we had a successful company and everything, so we moved the entire company to Ashland, Oregon, because they had a Shakespeare theater that is, one of the best in the world. And so the town is filled with all these actors. Deeming that, if we lived in this town, which was a really nice town, by the way, and we could make a movie, and we had the acting talent, because that's the hardest thing to get in making a movie. I can write it, and I can hire guys to make it, but, getting actors to come every day for weeks on end is, it's best to have them living there. And so I picked Ashland, then we moved there in 2008, and then I started trying to figure out what I was going to make a movie about. At the same time, I'd gone down to Shasta, which I'd been to many, many other times, went to a bookstore there and found all these odd little books about Mount Shasta. And I took them home, and I started reading them, and it was the most incredible array of oddness I had ever seen about a single place. It just got me really interested, and pretty soon I put on my hiking boots, and I'm hiking around the mountain, and talking to hikers and mountain climbers, and asking them about any strange meetings and any cave openings and the whole thing, and starting to get a feel for the whole place. And then I suddenly decided that this mountain had to have a movie made about it.
Excellent. And were you able to explore some of the caves?
I was, and we actually go into one of the bigger ones in the movie, and it was pretty amazing. I mean, it's astonishing to walk into a lava tube that's 100 feet high. It's just like, whoa.
Oh yeah, I'd like to live in one of those. That's great.
I mean, the flashlight doesn't even go hardly to the edge of the wall. It's so big. But it's also kind of spooky because you just don't know what's down there, and it's dark.
Wow. Well, it sounds interesting. Yeah, I'd like to explore that myself. That sounds pretty fun. Yeah, and I'm sure you're protected nonetheless. So.
Yeah, I was protected. I made sure.
Yeah, absolutely you are. And it's interesting. So when exactly is your release date for Shasta? Do we have a date?
Yeah, the date is September 12th, and it's going to open up and spread all through until, I don't know, it'll probably run for, through these theaters, and then we'll release it Through an online thing, Vimeo or whatever, for some small price, and then eventually it'll reach DVD, Blu-ray.
Excellent. I'm so excited. Wow, that's going to be great. Looking forward to that one for sure.
Yeah.
Yeah. So what is your take on extraterrestrial? Obviously, you feel like there is an extraterrestrial presence or some kind of presence over there around Mount Shasta and these other power spots across the globe. What is your impression? What did you pick up on when you were there?
Well, I don't know if there's I don't know if there's extraterrestrials that are flying around in tin cans, going from planet to planet, they can go from planet to planet. I know that, but I mean going from solar system to solar system. But there might be. I certainly think that the moon, many of the moons that are circling the planets in our own solar system, including our own moon, show earmarks of being hollowed out. And I know that Carl Sagan, in his book Pale Blue Planet, Pale Blue Marble, said that postulated that it was kind of ridiculous to build ships that could go out into deep space because you needed 6 feet of lead around you to stop the radiation from killing you. And he said, but then this is just nearly impossible for us to do. But what is possible for us to do is to go grab an asteroid and hollow it out and go live on the inside of it. And I think that he was either tipped off to this theory, or maybe he just thought of it independently. But either way, I think that both Iapetus, I think that of Saturn, I think that Phobos and the other moon of Mars are both artificial. I think our moon is highly likely artificial. Not artificial, when I say that, I don't mean that. I mean it's a real planet, but it just got hollowed out.
Right.
And people would live inside of it, protect themselves from the dangers of deep space. So I think there's a remnants of some kind of extremely advanced civilization in our solar system. The question is, for me, did that come from somewhere else, or is that a previous civilization that grew up? And I think it's a little of both. I think there was a fifth planet between Mars and Jupiter, which was destroyed in some kind of a war of some kind. And I think that the remnant races of the people that lived on that planet and the people that lived on Mars came to Earth as refugees, and they live here still. And in fact, some of the races of people on Earth are those people. And I think that, but I also have seen enough evidence to think that the origins of the human race were not here. That we came from somewhere else originally. In almost, and I'll even go one step further. I believe that the moon is the ship that we took to go from the place that we were before.
Wow, interesting. I never thought about that one, but I do totally resonate with the fact that I don't believe we are from here at all either. Not at all.
Yeah.
So, yeah, that's
not
interesting.
Not only we're not from here, but a lot of us aren't even from here, from this planet. We were from another planets in the solar system and had to come here, and we can't endure it very well here. So we have to wear sunscreen, and we have to wear hats, and we have to wear eye shades, and completely at odds with the fact that that we should not have to do that if we're indigenous creatures to this planet.
I so agree. Yeah.
Yeah, and it's completely amazing, and nobody sees it.
Not at all, but I do, and I totally resonate with what you're saying with, for sure. I never thought about the moon though, using that as a I guess a ship of some kind.
Yeah, well, I mean, if you look into deep masonry and their beliefs, and believe me, not even the Masons know as much as I do, because I got into a guy's library.
Cool.
And I couldn't take any books out, but I could read them all day long. And so I did. And they believe that we came from Sirius, so a planet that was orbiting Sirius B. and that they realized that Sirius A, the star that we can see, was turning into a white dwarf. So they it was turning into a red giant, then going to be a white dwarf, and this is borne out by I can't remember his first name. His last name is Gingrich, astronomer at Boston University. Culled out reports like from a long time ago in ancient Egypt and ancient Greece, and they said that Sirius was red, and now it's white. And so that would seem to say that the people that lived there saw that the sun was turning into a red giant, and captured an asteroid of some kind, hollowed it out, jumped inside, and came here. That's what I read inside a very high-level Freemasonry book.
That's fascinating.
And Druids believed that the moon was a hollowed-out ship. That's what they taught in High Druidism, is that the moon is a hollowed-out ship. And also, Orpheus, the Greek poet and historian, said that he had gone up to the top of Mount Olympus, and he had been taken up in a chariot of light that took him to the moon, and he met the beings, and there were these luminous white beings, and they took him up into the moon, he said, and the moon was filled with many mansions of light. Mm. So, I mean, there's a lot of weird evidence that says there's something else going on up there than we think. Mm-hmm. Lastly, there is a report, and you can get on the internet, it's called the Translunar Phenomena Report, and it was compiled by NASA in 1967, and it was a basic blow-by-blow of all of the strange and odd things that famous and accredited astronomers had seen on the moon through their telescopes through all the years since the beginning of the invention of the telescope with Galileo. And you can read this on the internet. It's called the TLP report, or the Translunar Phenomena Report. And this is a fascinating report of, great astronomers, saying, I saw, 3 lights, going by the moon. Or another one saying that I saw, flashes of light, here, or I saw, a bridge being built, even beyond, it was an incredible report. And it goes for pages and pages. And but the most interesting thing about this report is about 40 to 50% of all of the sightings that are in this Translunar Phenomena Report take place at the crater Aristarchus, a very visible crater that's on our side that we can see. And so when I found out about the report like 20 years ago, I immediately went into the Apollo archives and began looking for all of the photos that they took of the crater Aristarchus. And every single photo was a blown-out nightmare that you couldn't see anything. Wow. And I was like, what? And I couldn't understand it. But then, in 1994, the Clementine mission went to the moon and shot millions of digital photographs of the moon. And they shot, the Clementine shot 2 photos of Aristarchus. And whoa, in these 2 photos, you see a huge blue dome with geometry completely covering the crater. And there's 2 photos from 2 angles showing the dome. And this was all confirmed in, I think, 2010 or 2009, when an amateur astronomer on Earth just happened to catch Aristarchus in the right angle to see the blue dome. Now, this is 2009 or 10, so this is 16 years later, and there's that blue dome with the same exact geometry and everything on it, and it's glowing from the inside. You can Google this, too.
Excellent.
Blue dome over Aristarchus. So, that tells me that for at least 300 or 400 years, there's been somebody living up there in Aristarchus.
Right. Well, who do you think, or what do you think is living there?
Well, I mean, if the Mason secrets are true, or then it would be would be our makers. Would be the
Interesting.
people that made us. They're
Wow.
up there, yeah, the watchers.
Cool. You know what's interesting? I come from my grandfather was a very high-ranking Mason, so it's kind of cool for me. But anyways, the moon. When you mentioned the moon, now what about it being a craft that will take us home again? Is that possible? You think?
Well, I think that my good friend Richard Hoagland, his theory is that, and I agree with him. We just disagree on the photographic evidence. We both agree, though, that to us it looks like the entire Apollo missions were an intel gathering mission to find what the insides, how to get inside this sucker. And I think they probably got inside to the insides of the moon, because there's a lot of strange things. When the lunar orbiter went to the moon in 1966 and 67, especially Lunar Orbiter 2, it took a picture of these gigantic spires that were on the moon. They were shaped like a J, and they were casting these really long shadows, so they had to be really, really tall. And this photograph from Lunar Orbiter 2 made such a splash that it was the 3-inch high, all the way across the page headline in like the Seattle Times, the LA Times, the Washington Post. The New York Times was somewhat smaller, but still huge, with this photo included. Giant towers found on moon, right? But I mean, it was. I've seen the newspapers. I've held them in my hands. I mean, I know they exist. And where do they find these moons? Where do they find these towers? Well, they found them in the Sea of Tranquility, where Apollo 11 landed. And so, then this was quickly squashed like the next day. Oh no, it was a trick of light and magic, and go back to sleep, And now they're in more control of the press than they were then. They would never let it happen now. But so I believe that Lunar Orbiter 2 took a lot of photographs, and then that we had them here, and I think that they had a little slideshow. Their jaws were all on the floor, what they saw, and I think at that point, and I don't know how any thinking people could do anything else, because I've looked at the photographs and I've seen it, and would be the only conclusions I reached is that some intelligent force has seriously worked over the moon, the surface of the moon, a long, long time ago, and a lot of it's eroded. But there are new things like that I just told you about in Aristarchus that exist right now that have not eroded. So it is I don't know. Maybe the race inside there is not being able to maintain the thing, or they're dying out, or I don't know. I don't know what to tell you about. Maybe they don't care.
It's very interesting. Well, it kind of leads me to believe that there is the breakaway society, and of course that's probably connected to it. What's your impression of that?
Oh, there is a breakaway society, that's for sure. That's the whole point
of
everything you're seeing. And I believe they've broken away completely. They may even be in a very strong alliance with these other beings, or people. Maybe they're people. I don't know what they are up there. And I definitely believe that there's been a breakaway society. And it's like the one thing that you really can't talk about. You got to be really careful talking about the breakaway society.
Really? Interesting.
Yeah, they don't like that.
I've talked about that on my show a lot.
Well, good. Keep it up.
But what's interesting is because when I think of the breakaway societies, now I think back with the Germans and the Nazis doing reverse engineering and creating the Nazi bill, and then of course they took that into the underground, and then they reverse engineered more craft that was masked as what people would normally see as a UFO. They think it was extraterrestrial, but it's just ours. And then what about reverse engineering people to look like extraterrestrials? What's your take on that?
Oh, I absolutely think they're doing it for sure.
Me too.
I don't trust them at all. I think they're doing more than we can imagine. I did a speech, a lecture in D.C. about 5 years ago, and a woman came up to me after the lecture looking very concerned. And I said, so what's happening? And she said, I work at DARPA, and you would not even believe what they're building. He said, it's so far beyond human belief, and it's so terrifying that I don't even know what to say. And he says, I would tell you, but they're watching me even right now. And so I don't know what they're building. I just, my imagination lets me go, and I can imagine exactly what they're building, and it's not nice. Go watch Terminator.
Oh, yeah. Yeah, well, the transhumanism thing is really big right now, too. And, of course, the technological interface with man and machine. So that's kind of what you're talking about, I suspect.
Well, yeah. And in fact, one of the lead researchers for DARPA is working now at Google with Ray Kurzweil. And, it looks like Google is, going head over heels into transhumanism. And,
oh, yeah.
It's the ultimate disaster for the human race. But
I think so too.
At this point, I don't know what to tell you. It looks to me like they're just going all out, and there's going to be a complete war on liberty, and they're going to try and shut everybody down. I think it's happening right now.
Mm-hmm.
Right at this moment while we're speaking. I think that's what's going on.
Yeah, you think they're trying to shut like the internet down and alternative media?
Well, they can't shut the internet down, so they have to. If you look at the level of actions and legislation and newspaper articles, Newsweek coming out saying that Sandy Hook theorists are causing us to rethink First Amendment rights. And then, this guy in Santa Barbara shooting the place up. Mm-hmm. And then these guys in Las Vegas killing the cops. Mm-hmm. It's like it's a steady march. And then Feinstein putting forth her legislation that she's going to control guns through this legislation. If you see this and you're a thinking person, you have to be saying to yourself, Okay, I see. Step 1, 2, 3, 4, 5, 6, 7. If it's 7, then the next 3 have to be 8, 9, and 10, mm-hmm. and you can kind of see where we're going. And so I'm saying this because I don't know how much longer even I'm going to be allowed to talk on the radio, because I can really see the news coming down on all of us.
I can too. Well, as long as you're around, you let me know. I'll keep promoting you. Hey,
but you never know.
Yeah.
But you never know, because there's at the same time. The truth cannot be suppressed. It's already out. That's just the thing. So even if they, put me in jail, and they put David Icke in jail, and they put a bunch of that, if they do that, it doesn't matter. It's already out.
Yeah, I agree with you on that one insofar as that goes. Yeah, I don't think they're going to be able to do that. I think they posture and they bully, and they're using any weapon they can, which is usually linear, to control and manipulate. And of course, I don't have to tell you about mind control, because that's really big. And they've been deploying a lot of that, going around influencing the masses. So that's all part of their agenda too. So do you think that's connected into Archon behavior, or what?
Yeah, I think that the Archons did not see the internet coming. They didn't care, because it would still satisfy and satiate the things that they wanted. Mm-hmm. So they let it through, and I think and the internet is so organic that you really can't shut it down. I don't know if you know about the deep web, but I mean, you can easily get around on the internet without anyone detecting you if you really wanted to. Mm-hmm. And so the Archons, who are these spiritual parasites who invade people and get into their bodies and make them do things that human beings shouldn't be doing, they've been feeding off the human body politic for about 5,000 or 6,000 years now, and having a really nice time. But they did not gamble that they would be discovered. And so now that they're discovered, they're having a very difficult time of it. And right now we're just kind of a dog gnashing at their heels, and they can kick us away. But they're getting a little bit tired of that. But now the dog is growing. It's not just this little yapper. It's now a pit bull, mm-hmm. and it's getting more and more vicious and violent. And so they're, and they must be extremely worried. That's all I can say. They would not be going through doing all this if they hadn't picked up something. I don't know what. I've heard rumors, but I don't know what they picked up. But it could be some kind of, some kind of vets doing something, is what I suspect. And this is why they're, making sure that the vets are dying in the VA hospitals, because the vets are the ones that are the real threat, because they know how to shoot and they can organize, and us dummies out here and that never served in the military, we wouldn't know how to fight, and so they're soft killing the vets. It's kind of just so obvious. I can't believe it. And they're probably having the vets go through psychological, treatments before anything else happens, and they find out what they think. As soon as they find out they're a free thinker, then they stop returning their calls and they don't get any service, and then they die. And that's just what's going on in the VA hospitals. I would bet you dime to donuts that they're listening to their politics and choosing who lives and who dies by what they believe, which is what the healthcare system that we now are going to have is going to do. It's also you're also in the new healthcare system going to have to go in for psychological evaluation, so that what drugs to put you on. I know people think I'm wrong, but I'm not. This is what's going to happen. And you're either going to have to be a damn good liar and just act like a robot, or you're going to tell them, and they're going to be very clever, and they're going to find out in most cases what you really think, and then you'll be sent off to retrain camp.
Re-education camp is what they call it, yeah?
Yeah, they won't call it that, though. They'll call it something more benign. And you'll be taught, the socialist Luciferian nightmare that's about to come to us. Because, see, what's going on here is that there's a cult, and it's called the cult of Saturn. And people say, oh, it's the Vatican, oh, it's the Jews, oh, it's the Zionists, oh, it's the, the altar boys. I don't know. Everybody's got their boogeyman for what's going on. The Illuminati, Illuminati is probably at least a little closer because it shows a loose aggregation of forces, which is more like what's going on. Because you see, the real force that's behind all of this is this cult of Saturn, which is a German cult, and it's been in Germany for a while. And if you start examining many of the groups that are accused of being part of the New World Order, you will always look and see that they suspiciously have Germanic roots, and this is because the cult of Saturn is essentially a Germanic organization. The Skull and Bones, of course, we know came from Germany, and I believe it's a cult of Saturn organization. And the cult of Saturn, has a goal, and they openly worship Lucifer, and they believe in a kind of a libertine fascism, where there's a kind of a sexual freedom, but it's under this huge, immense, horrible, dark discipline that no one would really want to go into, and but they don't know it until they get into it. This is, and Stanley Kubrick is, as far as I can tell, he must have been a member of this cult of Saturn, as I believe NASA, the people that started NASA, the German scientists, were part of the cult of Saturn.
Interesting.
And why NASA wanted to take the Cassini mission so fast and get to Saturn. They wanted to find out what was out there. And if you read the book Fire and Ice, which talks, the only book really written about the cult of Saturn, very good book. At one point he talks about the rituals of the cult of Saturn, and then another time he talks about the goals of the cult of Saturn. And what's absolutely amazing about it is that the goal of the cult of Saturn is exactly the movie 2001: A Space Odyssey, to have the individual transformed by passing through the gate of Saturn, and then being completely attaining complete gnosis, and then coming back to Earth as a light being. It's exactly what happens in the movie 2001, except that he goes to the planet Jupiter, but we know that Kubrick was originally going to make the planet Saturn, but somehow decided at the last minute to make it into Jupiter. Probably was told by the cult of Saturn that it was getting too close. So then the second thing that is eerie about all this is that the rituals of the cult of Saturn are almost completely ideated in Eyes Wide Shut, in the orgy scene. Reading what the book Fire and Ice is someone actually found the inner papers of the cult of Saturn. And so this guy, author, wrote a book about the actual inner documents of this cult. And it's you would think you were watching 2001: A Space Odyssey or watching Eyes Wide Shut when you read it.
Wow, that's really amazing. And it seems to me like, of course, Hitler was obsessed with finding ancient documents or ancient artifacts. So it doesn't strike me as odd that they would hunt these types of things down and then try to do a certain ritual associated with whatever agenda they have.
Yeah, actually, I believe that the Nazis had no intention of winning. That was not the point. The point was to use the war as a cover for several attainments for the cult of Saturn. One was to search the tunnel systems all over the earth, which they did. Peru, Tibet, France. They went to all the places that had tunnels. Northern Africa. Ethiopia was the first place that the Italians attacked, right? Where's the Ark of the Covenant supposed to be? Supposed to be in Ethiopia. And and also the same thing with the Japanese. They began searching through the tunnel systems in China and looking for artifacts and things. It's all very strange. And what I believe is that and then of course the technology. So Hitler used the cover of a war to completely finance, the technology that Joseph Farrell talks about, the Bell and all the rest, and really put a jump start into it. And people don't really realize how many things were invented by the Nazis. But it is actually jaw-dropping. And, everything from television to radar, and like, whoa. And so the... and then the second thing was these artifacts. It was a twofold purpose. And then when, Hitler could have used all of this high-tech equipment to defeat his enemies, but instead he didn't. He ran. But I don't think he ran. I think he took everything off into the Andes, where they especially were funded again by the same group of people to even higher develop these technologies. Then the older technologies that Joseph Farrell's talking about, these were found by the Allies and split between the Russians and the Americans, and the German scientists that they found were split between the Russians and the Americans. And this same group began a dual project with the Americans and the Russians in competition against each other because they knew that was the best way to develop new technologies. Then they would slip in every few years whatever the Germans that were finding down in the Andes, they would slip that into the system, like, computer technologies and that kind of thing, and to keep the whole system going. So I believe that at the very top of the pyramid is the cult of Saturn, whose main adversary, by the way, is the cult of Jehovah. So their main enemy on earth is anyone who worships Jehovah. So Christians are going to be wiped out. I guarantee it. And so then the next chain down from this would have been the cult of Saturn, and then the next chain down would be the Germans that were working in the tunnels in the Andes. Peter Levenda has covered this in his great work. And then under that would be Russia and the United States space programs. And then that apex of four is the power behind the breakaway civilization, which only the top of the pyramid is the one that's actually breaking away.
Mm-hmm. Yeah, that makes
sense.
Well, it makes a lot of sense to me, and it makes me wonder, since they have already broken away, what's here for the rest of us? I mean, on this world, it seems to me like everybody's expendable at this point, and that everything that's been done has already been set in motion. Do we have any good people, good guys in our corner in the underground?
Well, the rumors are that there's relic races also involved. And these relic races are races that have been here for a long time, that have lived quietly or sometimes maybe not so quietly among us. And depending on the time, they're like, and like the tall whites. And then the rumors are that the tall whites have come to realize that the Illuminati or the New World Order is extremely dangerous and are now working to defeat them. So what's going on is we've been cast adrift by the breakaway civilization, which doesn't even give a crap about us anymore. And this happened in full in 2008 with the election of Obama. That was a signal that they were done. Mm-hmm. And they didn't need to manipulate us anymore with their puppets. They just don't care anymore. And so then the group that has been left behind, which is we call the Illuminati or the New World Order, they have been tasked with nothing. They know that the breakaway civilization has abandoned them here, and so they realize that the unruly mob is going to blame somebody for the mess, right? And they're realizing that the internet is allowing the unruly mob to almost properly identify who caused all the problems. And so now what's interesting about it is that in two cases, excuse me one second, in two cases recently, two people in the power elite have decided to begin blaming the tall whites as the power behind the throne causing the problems. One is Paul Hillary, the former Canadian Defense Minister and member of Queen Elizabeth's Inner Council, the Privy, came out and said that the tall whites were behind the rise of Nazi Germany and the rise of the United States. And then Karen Hoods, former World Bank employee and whistleblower, has now come out and said that the Vatican is run by tall whites. And so I found that extremely alarming, and almost as if they realized that, the crowds were massing with the pitchforks, and they decided to throw a wrench in the cogwheel. Mm-hmm. And so now we're blaming the tall whites. We didn't do it, they did it. Mm-hmm. There we go, got the Queen of England and the Vatican. Well, my God, who's left?
Right, exactly. And what comes to mind still, I mean, I know that they've been doing engineering insofar as trying to create a hybrid of an extraterrestrial to pass it off as a true extraterrestrial. And I'm wondering if their version of an extraterrestrial is what they're going to try and pass off to the masses as real.
I like that. I hadn't. That was a Outer Limits, I believe, with Robert Culp. Oh. And they created they grabbed one poor guy and they did plastic surgery on him and put an eye over where his temple is and they did a little thing and then they let him loose, but and a hunter shot him and killed him when he landed from the flying saucer, and that was the big ending. But anyway, I would say that they're probably already created it and even sent it out into, let's capture somebody and see what they think of it, right? Mm-hmm. And why not? I mean, what's stopping them? They have nothing but money, and we are completely mind controlled. We can't do anything about it, and the breakaway civilization has abandoned them, and so we have the worst of the worst now.
Mm-hmm. It certainly seems that way. It seems very grim, and I'm hoping there's a light at the end of the tunnel. I'm trying to stay optimistic, but I don't see one, and a lot of people do. But do you see a light at the end of the tunnel?
Yeah, actually, I think we already won the war.
Do you really? That's good.
Yeah, I think that they already know it, and I just, it's just not going to be easy, and it's not going to be fast. Mm-hmm. It's one person at a time. That's all the way we have to do it, and not play their little games. The New World Order is trying to sucker Putin into attacking, the Ukraine right now, and because Putin's a high-level chess player, he's not taking the bait, right? Well, we got to not take the bait. Mm-hmm. They're going to try to bait us into all these things, and we have to keep preaching this kind of high-level view of the world, because people are actually so desperate and looking for answers, and day by day, more and more realize that the people in charge are not giving them the answers, and they're looking for other answers, other people giving them, and then that's where we come in.
Right.
And we provide the answers that are not being provided, that answers that make sense. They go, wow, I get it now.
Mm-hmm. That is so true. Yeah, I'm really grateful for you. I love listening to you. My goodness, I should have had you on for 4 hours instead of 2. But anyways, it's just a pleasure to have you on tonight. I really enjoy listening to the information you have. You're very wise and very evolved, obviously. So that's really nice. But I was going to ask you, do you think there, obviously, I know there is talk of a Nazi base, or there was a Nazi base in Antarctica. Is that the case?
I wouldn't put it by anybody. I've looked for years for the evidence about Admiral Byrd, and I just haven't felt that satisfied that what I've been told happened, mm-hmm. even the running away part or any of that is true. But I do know that submarines kept showing up in Buenos Aires all through the 40s and 50s that were manned by 12-year-old boys. Mm-hmm. And you wonder, well, what's going on here, mm-hmm. and it's like, well, because they escaped, and where did they escape from? And 10 years after the war, the answer is, well, probably Antarctica if they went to Buenos Aires. Mm-hmm. And yes, I do believe that there's a lot more going on. I think the Nazis were so heavily funded in a way that we don't even know. And so they may have had that base by 1940. Mm-hmm.
Yeah.
I mean, we have to look at, once you realize that there was another force even above the Nazis, mm-hmm. that had an agenda.
And isn't that all about mind control too? I mean, wasn't that the other force or whatever was the handler of the Nazis, so to speak? Isn't it just about mind control? Like the Nazis were being mind controlled into doing and behaving a certain way? Or was it possession?
No, I think it was mind control. What they did was first they unfairly attacked Germany in World War I when they didn't deserve it, and then two, when Germany was crushed because the United States came into the war, then they again treated Germany really unfairly. Of course, they were going to set up a conflagration with the Versailles Treaty, and so then Hitler came in, who was probably a paid agent, and came in and rubbed everybody's face in the fact how badly they were treated, and he started blaming the Jews because the Jews owned a lot of the businesses in Germany, and it stuck, and this was all pre-planned, and then the great German mind was kind of taken over to be colonized and then used for creating these ships and technologies that the very Central Power Group wanted.
Mm-hmm. Yep.
And that was the whole point of the war. The war had nothing to do with anything else.
Mm-hmm. Yeah, that adds up. And I was going to mention real quick, we're going to take a real quick break. We'll be right back, everybody. Stay tuned at Dark Matter Radio Network. Welcome back, everybody, to Hyperspace on Dark Matter Radio Network. I'm your host, Solaris BlueRaven, and I'm here with my special guest, Jay Weidner, and we're discussing his new film coming out on September 12th called Shasta. And Jay, you with me?
I am.
All right. So, yeah, I'm looking forward to that film being released on September 12th. And also, I wanted to kind of run some information by you real quick. There's so much... I hear so many people going back and forth about the moon landing, and okay, it was a hoax, and then part of it was actually for real, and then the other part was a front. So what exactly happened and transpired?
Well, everything that we were shown was fake, and everything, but they really went.
Okay.
And what they did, I don't know. I mean, I can only speculate. I've been told that they found technologies, and that was the whole point.
Okay.
And they know that the moon is a hollowed-out vehicle of some kind.
Well, let me ask you something. So, did they use the type of technology that they showed everybody on the television, or did they do something through the Black Space program, which was more advanced?
Yeah, they used.
Okay.
They were probably on the moon in the 50s.
Right, that's what I get too. Okay, I just want to confirm that because so basically, okay, everybody look here at the screen, and this is what you get, but that's really not what happened at all, and that's not the way they went about going to the moon, right?
Yeah, I know nothing that we know about the moon, and people at NASA don't even know this because it's a secret space program. Mm-hmm. So they're just there for show,
right? And
they're not even there for anything else. But they, using standard technology, realized in the early 60s that they couldn't get there. And I believe, of course, that Kennedy, let's see how I put this. We know that Kennedy saw the flying saucer technology because there's an FBI FOIA document of Marilyn Monroe telling, I think, Dorothy Kilgallen, that Jack showed me the alien stuff today, right? And that, of course, we were the cover story, right? Mm-hmm. And so I believe that JFK's admonition or a challenge to NASA to get to the moon by the end of the decade was designed to flesh out this technology because he saw it and he was like, wow, this would solve the energy crisis, And they're like, well, we can't show that to anybody, sir. And he's like, well, you got to. We could have, people in Africa could have power, and well, we can't do that, sir. And so he went back and said, well, how can I fake the situation so they have to release it? And so he devised getting to the moon by the end of the decade, knowing they couldn't do it with standard technology, and that was probably not a real wise thing for him to do. So, but he was our last real president, took a lot of risks, and he had a lot of problems, I agree, but he was a great guy, and in the end, he was a great president. And I'm not saying that NASA had anything to do with his killing, but I just find it odd that NASA's senator was LBJ because he was from Texas, and it happened in Texas, and LBJ became president, immediately began funding NASA to billions of dollars, to which I wonder where that money really went.
Right, and of course it goes into the Black Space program, and NASA's just the front. It's just a title. It's just a screen.
Right. It's just the front. And you can't blame anybody in NASA for anything. I've been there. They're really nice people. Mm-hmm. They're not lying. They're earnestly trying to figure out, answers to questions that you can see that they know that you've got them. Mm-hmm. But because they know in their minds that we really did go to the moon, they give answers, but the answers are usually so flimsy that you wonder. But it's not that they're lying. It's just that they're struggling. They're in an intellectual contradiction.
Right. I feel sorry for them,
I do too.
And it's really a shame because it's true. We could change the world overnight for the better if we just exposed all this wonderful advanced technology if it was used with wisdom. They just don't want to do that.
No, they don't. And this is going to be the rub. Where we're headed right now is a lot of things are going on, which is why I think that they're really putting up their guards right now. One of the things that's going on is they're pretty much defunding a lot of the military. And so a lot of disgruntled vets are going to be coming home now. Mm-hmm. And I mean a lot, like hundreds of thousands, which is going to really add to the employment problem. And they're collapsing society in front of us purposefully. Mm-hmm. They're bringing hundreds of thousands of kids over the border in Mexico. That's to collapse of society. Mm-hmm. And so they would rather collapse society, let us kill each other, and then the remnants are so much easier to pick off. And but what's worrying them is that we're figuring everything out seconds after they make the decisions. Mm-hmm. And they're screwing up too. I mean, let's face it. Bill Gates is at a TED Talk, and somebody asked him a question about depopulation, and he gets this big smile on his face. He says, well, if we do a really good job with vaccines and reproductive health, we can bring the population down by 20%. You're like, huh? What? What a screw up, right? And he said it, and it's there, and anybody can watch it. And that's the truth right there. He's telling you right there the vaccines are designed to kill people. Mm-hmm.
Yeah, it's transparency. And let's not talk, I mean, I actually have a background in the covert technology aspects because it's a long story. But anyways, I do know what they do with deployment of psychotronic warfare. And that's another aspect of mind control. I'm sure you're familiar with EEG cloning, and if you're not, sometime we'll talk about it off air. But they do so much to try to create human robots, and that's just another aspect of what they're doing insofar as deployment of mind control agendas across the globe. So yeah, it's really sick when you think about it, and it makes us well, for myself, I feel like I've done the best I can to try to be exposing the misuse of technology and standing up and doing radio shows and this and that. But I tell you, it's really hard because you get the feeling that a lot of people just don't understand what's happening, and a lot of them are still being slept.
Yeah, they're mind controlled, and there's nothing that can be done about them. Don't even bother. Yeah. Sorry, that's just the way it is. I'm not trying to. I feel sorry for them, but not everybody has a soul. I think some people come here and they're just shells, and I just don't know what they're doing. And but right now, I think pretty much our life is on the line. And I think most people don't know it. So that worries me, and I don't know how to warn people about what I see going on. I'm a highly anticipatory kind of person, so if you really care about your friends and family, you should start thinking of ways to protect yourself and bug out if you can.
Yeah, I've been hearing that too. So that's pretty much what the game plan is insofar as for beings like us. Is that what you suspect, or what about moving outside the U.S. and things like that?
I would highly advise, but be careful where you go. Paraguay and Chile are both good places. Not Ecuador, don't go there, or Venezuela or Colombia, or any place in Central America except for Costa Rica. Canada's a great place if you can stand the cold. I think Europe, Ireland might be nice. Islands might be safe or safer. Iceland, Ireland. I wouldn't move anywhere in Africa. Probably nowhere in the Middle East. Nowhere in China or India or any of those places. There'd be nowhere to go there. So, the places are running out. And there are isolated pockets within the United States, though, that you can get to. And you might want to think about that. I know for sure that these isolated pockets are not going to be thought about for a long time.
Oh, that's good. That's good to know. Yeah, actually, considering where I'm living right now, I kind of wonder because it seems like the hub of a lot of activity. So,
same here. I usually don't live near hubs of activity, but since I moved to Colorado, I've lived. I'm like, ugh.
That's right. You and I are here in the same area. So, yes, it's a love-hate relationship in this state for sure. Well, it's changed. Yeah, it's changed over the years. Even Boulder's changed.
It has. Boulder's gotten to be our seriously upper crust city. I mean,
it used to be really cool hippies and crystals and
Not anymore.
Nope, everything's changing.
Nothing but expensive cars and expensive houses.
Yeah, and everybody's in debt trying to pay for it.
Yep. So. Perfect situation for them.
Yeah, keep them busy, working, lulled, and then in debt. Yeah.
Yep.
Without a doubt.
It's quite incredible to watch.
Well, you did say we had a light at the end of the tunnel here, so I'm assuming that somewhere along this path in the United States, it will clear out and we'll have a better reality to live in. Or
well, what's going on is that we're going through what we call the fourth turning. The United States has a huge dynamic change that happens every 85 years. So you had the Revolution, and then 85 years later the Civil War, then 85 years later the Great Depression, World War II, then 85 years later to now. And so what we're going through, every one of these turnings, the country is completely different at the end of the turning than it was at the beginning of the turning. And so we're in the middle of this chaos. Certain forces know that we're in this turning, and they have an upper hand. I would say Obama's forces know about this turning and are using it in very clever ways to look like they're the leaders of the turning, when actually they're the dark side of the whole thing. Mm-hmm. And so, but this turning has a long way to go. It'll be 2025 before 2030 before we're at the end of it, right? So we're only in the middle of the grip of this thing. We don't know where it's going to go, and it's anybody's game. Mm-hmm. So the light at the end of the tunnel to me is this, and I really do believe this is a light at the tunnel, is that what this turning is it's the manifest resolution of the internet. And so the internet started at the tail end of the last 85-year journey. Saying that if we take 85 years back from say 2005, then we get to 1930, which would be right in the middle of that last change. So I just used 2005. Probably more likely it's 2008 with the Great Crash is really the beginning of the fourth turning. And let's just say 2008 was the beginning of the fourth turning. So 1992 is the beginning of the internet, which was right at the end of the last turning. Well, the internet is the very beginning of what I think is about a 40-year-long maturation process of the human species. And it works just like maturity. So the human being is, when they're young, they're besought with nothing but information, a lot of it wrong, and and they don't know what's right, what's wrong. It's pretty much just very confusing. Okay, and this is exactly what the first 10 years of the internet was like, from 1992 to 2002. It was very confusing. The facts were flying left and right. Nobody knew how to discern information. You didn't even know if someone was being funny or not. Mm-hmm. It wasn't until we evolved and started adding LOL to our emails and to our websites that people, you're being funny, I get it. People get mad at me, right? And I'm like, wow, I thought I was being pretty witty there, gee, and so we learned an etiquette, which is what you learn in school. Mm-hmm. You come to kindergarten, it's all very confusing, and then around 6th or 7th grade, you've now learned the tools and that you need to learn some of the higher stuff. And so, but what was what occurred around 2002, actually 2001, was 9/11. And what 9/11 did was it galvanized the internet as a search and understanding tool. Because those of us out here in the field, I'm sure you were one of them, were so frustrated by the mainstream media's refusal to actually report what the hell happened that day that we began using the internet as a source. And a lot of internet sites like rents.com, almost like they flipped the switch, and they just started talking about things that they never were talking about before. And you can see this across the board, and with all these major sites. alternative sites, that is. They spiked up the information after 9/11. 9/11 being this galvanizing force in our maturity. So what 9/11 was when you broke up with your first lover, or when you got your first fist fight in school, or when you did something wrong and you got caught and you realized that you had made an ethical decision that was wrong. There's this point in life where the confusion begins ebbing away and you begin realizing, that there's this harsh reality that you're living in. And this harsh reality is relentless, and it's going to be with you for the rest of your life. And that's called becoming mature. And that's what happened to us on 9/11. It took 4 or 5 years for it to sink in, probably. But we realized there was some force so evil, so unbelievably crafty, that and planning it so far in advance, that you was like, my God, do I even want to be alive in this world with such people who could kill 3,000 people without even glancing at it? And I think this was part of it, but we're still in confusion because we're still only in our puberty part of this wake up in 2002. Then we start approaching 2012, and again there's this new galvanizing kind of thing happening where the Mayan calendar is predicting, this event that's going to change the world. And suddenly everybody's like thinking that, there's going to be this supernatural event, all being driven by the internet, by the way, that's going to happen. So 2012 comes, and womp womp, nothing happens. So now, again, it's like losing your boyfriend or girlfriend or whatever. There's a huge sense of disappointment. And again, what does this rot? It rots maturity. It brings, I shouldn't have been following this fantasy. Santa Claus doesn't exist. There's not going to be some gigantic change of the human race. It's not going to happen without me doing a lot of really, really hard work. And this, now we're 20 years into the internet. Now we're in our 20s. Now we're waking up and we're realizing that we're eating junk food. We're drinking way too many beers. We're smoking way too much dope. We have no discipline. We've let our lives wreck. We're overweight. We don't have a relationship. And we have to clean up our act, which is the time when you turn into an adult. And that's where we are right now. But that's not the end of the process. Becoming an adult is only the second part of this thing. So knowledge, or the way that this thing works, is it goes from information, which is just scattered bits of knowledge, into knowledge, which is taking bits of information and concatenating them and concentrating them into talents, learning to play the piano, learning physics, learning astronomy, learning how to write, learning how to paint, learning how to ski. And then this is the second level of the human experience, which we are going through collectively, which is what I'm trying to describe to you right now. We're going through this collectively. Collectively, we're maturing, not individually. This is the first time in human history this has ever happened. So what's the next thing that happens? Well, me, sitting in at my age, I can tell you what happens. What's going to happen next, and I'm going to do everything in my power to facilitate this, and everybody like us should be doing this from now on. We now have to move to the next level, which is wisdom. And what is wisdom? Well, first it's information, tiny bits of scattered knowledge that you take and you pick and choose which parts of this scattered information you want to use to create knowledge. Knowledge, playing the piano, learning how to ski, all the things that you learned in your life. Okay, so what's wisdom? Wisdom is taking those pods of knowledge and intertwining them together to understand the world and to create a more cohesive whole of what is going on. And this doesn't happen until you're 35 or 40. Most people, it doesn't happen at all. And if you're lucky. And this is why they tell you can't study the Kabbalah until you're 35. You can't study Zen until you're 35. The Roshi sends you away. Come back when you're 35. Hey, I can do this, And it's because what happens is that your brain, the internet is doing exactly what your brain does. What happens when you reach about 35 or 40 years old, if you're lucky, is that the synaptic inroads in your brain. So what your thoughts are these little tiny electrical currents which are burned into the meat of your brain. And this creates a memory. This little electrical charge in the brain. It's like a little vein or a little streak of lightning, right? This is a synapse. And you begin, as you learn things, you burn more and more of these into your brain until if you're a fully realized human being, by the time you're 40, man, you got a brain that is just filled with these synapses and neuronic pathways, you might call them. And so what happens when you reach maturity and you start getting into your 40s is these pathways begin crossing over. You begin seeing the color of sound. You begin seeing the art of geometry. It's hard to describe. You begin to see the other worlds too, and you realize that there's other things that you were not totally aware of with your senses that are out there, though, that are really there. And it's maturity. You become a mature person at this point. Well, that's what's going to happen to us via the internet. We need to voluntarily become the wise leaders that we never had and extol our wisdom as far and wide as we can, as humbly as possible across the internet. And then this will cause a collective wisdom rise among the human race, and then we will, like all wise people, look back at our childhood, which will be the last 6,000 years, and be really, really embarrassed. Mm-hmm. That's what's going to happen, I think, and that's the light at the end of the tunnel. And so it's a lot of hard work. We got a long way to go. It's only 2014, so we've got 15, 16 years to extol this thing in order to make it work.
Right. Well, I totally resonate with what you're saying for sure, and I do believe that is happening to a lot of beings like us already. We're moving to higher levels of consciousness to help distribute, an awareness. At the same time, I'm wondering about the opposition coming and so far as shutting down and going out of its way to control, manipulate, those of us who are actually beacons right now. Yeah,
they are, and they don't know what to do. I mean, I was viciously, right after Sandy Hook, I got on the Jeff Rense program, and I talked about some of the odd things that I saw at Sandy Hook. This is a few weeks, like maybe 3 weeks after Sandy Hook, and maybe a month. And I talked about the odd behavior of people, but I cautioned that we don't want to jump to any conclusions here because we don't know really what's going on here. And these mad conspiracy theories saying that they're all actors and all this is really a dangerous road to go down. We got to be careful because it could be used against us. And I thought I was preaching a little bit of maturity there. So and it became a huge YouTube hit, 100,000 hits or whatever. But oddly enough, about 3 months later, Salon.com and a writer named Adam Seitzwald writes an article called Sandy Hook Conspiracies Debunked or something. And, he starts out the article by basically character assassinating me and Jeff Rense, but mostly me, and calling me a conspiracy theorist, Jay Weidner. It's like, really, dude? I've written 2 books. I've made 25 documentaries. Really? Why don't you call Shakespeare a conspiracy theorist? Because all of his plays are conspiracy theories. And and then and even at one point says, oh, maybe the Jews did it, and throws this line in as if I or Jeff Rense had said it when. You can read it as, if you read it and you're intelligent, you realize, of course, he just throws it in as his own opinion. Mm-hmm. But you could also read it and say, oh, wow, these guys are a couple Nazis, right? And And it was all done on purpose. So I thought, wow, somebody went out of their way to assassinate my character because I was preaching that we should be responsible when talking about Sandy Hook conspiracy theories.
Mm-hmm.
Huh? And then I realized, wow, they must be really afraid of us.
Mm-hmm.
Because, because I mean, they don't want, they want to take down anybody who's preaching responsibility.
Mm-hmm. Yeah, it's a troll alert is what I call it.
Yeah, and what's funny about that, though, what that got me off when that happened to me, and I got attacked by Salon.com. I couldn't understand because I'm a journalist, right?
Mm-hmm.
I was a journalist for years, and I couldn't understand how a journalist could just, attack someone for asking questions about a story, especially a story that was as poorly reported as the Sandy Hook story was, which is where most of the conspiracies come from, which is the bad reportage by Anderson Cooper and Fox News and MSNBC. They were terrible, just terrible about it. No facts, just emotions and
talking heads. Yeah.
Yeah, and anyway, so that got me off to finding out about who Mr. Alex Seitzwald was, and I went to the Columbia School of Journalism, which is a red alert because anybody that goes to Columbia usually comes out a Marxist. And so I went to the Columbia School of Journalism, and I found the most astonishing article. There was like an article about how to handle Sandy Hook conspiracy theories. Now, this is just a couple months after Sandy Hook, right? And this is the top journalism school, one of the top journalism schools in America. And and you can Google this and find it. This top journalism school is telling journalists that they should not print any comments or letters or even write articles that ever have anybody who's questioning Sandy Hook in them at all. Right? This is an article written, talking points about how to essentially cover up something. Because, and unlike them who have it all figured out, I have no idea what happened at Sandy Hook. So it's just been very interesting to watch this. It's been concerted. And so then I went back to Mr. Seitzwald's article, hack job on me, and like 2 months ago, because it was becoming a controversy for me, and it was really funny because I went to the comment section, and it starts out with all the Salon.com people, praising him for his reporting, which is ridiculous because there is no reporting in the article. And then what happens is about 15 comments in come the truthers. And for the next 600 comments are the truthers calling him every name in the book and calling him a hack and a shill.
Oh, that's great.
Yeah, it was funny. And there's I don't know if you heard about it, but there's they did a study of conspiracy theorists and non-conspiracy theorists.
Mm-mm.
Yeah, they did it. It was I'm sure you can Google it. Came out. It was just recently, within the last 8 months. And what they did was they looked at the comments that were in regular sites, like CBS site, CNN, and not fringe, but regular. And they took all the comments that were there, and then they divided the comments into conspiracy theories and theorists and anti-conspiracy theorists. And they concluded that the conspiracy theorists were far less sure of exactly what occurs in almost every instance that they're talking about than the anti-conspiracy theorists, who's almost 100% sure that they know what's going on. The conspiracy theorist rarely resorts to ridicule and almost always just wants to stay on fact, while the anti-conspiracy theorists never want to stay on fact and always resort to ridicule. Mm-hmm. And then they finally concluded that the conspiracy theorists were the more intelligent of the two, the more inquisitive of the two, the more polite of the two, and the anti-conspiracy theorists, without knowing it, frequently had to resort to their own conspiracy theories to explain events.
Oh, wow.
Yep.
Makes me want to leave the planet. I tell you. It's like a Homer Simpson episode, isn't it?
It is. You're talking to Homer Simpsons all over the place.
Oh my gosh. Wow, that's pretty wild.
It is.
Yeah. Well, and then there's that side that I think what you mentioned earlier is you can only help so many people, and then they have to be willing to move to the next level themselves, and that takes a lot of discipline.
It does, and a lot of people just don't have the discipline. It's not going to come easy, and it's not really. I talk about this in my movie Shasta. It's not how many, it's who.
Mm-hmm.
And it's quality. We have to choose quality over quantity.
I agree.
And so who cares if the people that go to the baseball games don't want to join us in our struggle to become awakened? It doesn't matter to me. And I'm only interested in the people that have the high Q enough and the intuitive knowledge enough to want to join, not because we're trying to have a revolution, because it's the right thing.
Right. Exactly. Yeah, I so agree with you on that one. Yeah, without a doubt. And where do the Masons stand in this equation?
Well, I think the Masons were at once actually a pretty cool group of people, and they had some pretty cool knowledge. I think that the way that the origins, as I understand it, of the Freemasons was to pass down the knowledge of a periodic disaster that occurs with the sun, which is a normal thing that solar scientists agree is something that happens all the time, and that so they started out as a father to son and mother to daughter, no doubt, organization that passed on this knowledge, and then they even provided places of escape in case this happens. And but then it seems to me that they kind of quit passing down the knowledge, or they thought it wasn't that important anymore, or they thought it was quackery, or magic fairy tales or something, and so they just didn't deem it that important, and then they kind of lost their ability to even understand their own symbols. And it basically became a Rotary Club, but a Rotary Club that then was taken over, I believe, about 200 years ago by a little over 200 years ago, by a very nefarious group of people who are the Cult of Saturn.
Wow.
And then they took over.
Yeah, that makes a lot of sense that they were infiltrated. And of course, anytime there's a pure lineage or something where people are going to higher levels of consciousness, it seems like there's an infiltration to pull them down.
There is, and it's in every level of our society. It's even down to the level now where they don't want any, even churches. They want even the churches out and destroyed. They want, people think that they're. I guarantee you that when they do their takeover, the first people that they go after are the people who are doing spiritual things.
Yeah.
Because they will not cooperate at all. They know it, and they hate it. They hate people that live quiet lives of spirit.
Right, that are connected. Yeah. It's very interesting. Well, you know what? It just sounds like transhumanism to me. Every time you talk about this, that's what it sounds like to me. It's the integration and induction of all people interfaced with their version of what they want God to be, which is usually a machine at this point.
That's what it is. They believe that they can create super beings, and they are. They're creating them in labs, and they think they can infuse them with a technology that makes them into, it's going to be, if we don't have our mass awakening and, tell these guys that they have to stop, then we're all going to be, it's not going to be good.
Yeah, I see that too. I really do. And, I know that your background, you're so vast in so many areas, but I know you're an alchemist, or you definitely have an expertise in that area. So how does alchemy fit into the transhumanism, in your opinion?
Oh, it's like the dark side of it. So everything in the Aquarian age has a light side and a dark side. And we've been extolling for 20, 30, 40 years now the light side of the Aquarian age, where we're all going to have unity consciousness, and we're going to clean the environment up, we're not going to have any war, and all these things. But there's a dark side. Agenda 21 is the dark side of the environmental, and the Luciferianism is the dark side of the spiritual awakening that's going on in this age. And so the people who think that that there isn't a group that worships Lucifer and has infiltrated into every aspect of our society, just, I'm sorry, you're wrong. I'm with you. There probably isn't a Lucifer. They're probably insane, to worship this guy. But they do worship them, and they do exist, and they do have an agenda. And their agenda is so clear to me once I know who they are and what they want, that I see it everywhere, and I can see the fingerprints everywhere.
Right.
And so, to me, we have to flip it back to the bright side of the Aquarian age. We don't want Agenda 21. We want to have people living in small villages where they grow their own food and we take care of each other. We don't want to be crammed into high rises and we the same thing with the genetic manipulation. That's the dark side of alchemy and the creation of beauty and truth and love, which is the virtues of alchemy. Right. And this is the opposite. This is the madmen. This is the insane people.
I agree. Well, it seems to me like they're mad because they're disconnected from source. They have no connection to pure consciousness. I don't think that people who are connected or plugged into source would act that way. Do you?
No. In fact, you can go to Netflix and watch the documentary on the father of transhumanism, Ray Kurzweil, and it's pretty clear the guy's got serious psychological issues over his father and wishes that he had invented a machine that he could have downloaded his father's consciousness into, so he can still be hanging with dad. And it's like, whoa, this is so blatantly transparent. This guy he should be seeing a psychiatrist or something. He shouldn't be running the high technology for Google. Are you kidding me?
Right. Well, it's Frankenfather at this point, and that's what they do with the synthetic telepathy, because I do have a background in that, and the artificial intelligence. It's all part of the supercomputer designed in the underground, designed to infiltrate the brain template, so they can interface it onto their supercomputers. And you know what? What are they creating? I mean, where does the soul reside when they do this? And I've questioned this before, because it's a disrespect to spirit on so many different levels.
Well, it is, and it's the Luciferian principle. The Saturn cult, they have a deal. The deal is they have to tell you what they're doing before they do it. And then the second part of the deal is you have to consent to it. And that's part of it. They don't just get to take you over. You have to consent to it. And that's what the mind control is. The mind control is to create a situation of such aggravation for you that you agree. Because if you agree, the aggravation ends. Whatever that aggravation is. And if you know cybernetics, they can really screw with your brain.
Oh, psychotronic warfare. Oh, absolutely.
Oh, my God. I can't even believe the number of people I've talked to that, it's horrible. Absolutely horrible. Yep. And I believe them all. And so that's what it is. And it's, how do you get you to consent? How do they get you to consent? Okay, so they create situations. So they say to you, you have to get your kids have to be vaccinated, and you say, no, I don't think so. I don't want my kids to be vaccinated. And then they say, okay, so then your kids, then we have to take your kids away from you. And then, of course, you consent. And that's how it's worked. That's how it's going to work. And it's going to be a police, military state unless we awaken fast. And I think we are awakening. They're going to end up in this police state where they're giving us choices. And that's what Obamacare is just going to be. It's going to be a series. Once you're in Obamacare, you're just going to be given a series of Hobson choice, right? The door on the left and the door on the right. Door on the left is murder by injection. The door on the right is murder by radiation.
It's a Roach Motel.
Yeah, exactly. And that's what they're planning. I mean, this is how the culling is going to happen, and it's going to be a Holocaust if we don't stop it.
Yeah, I kind of see that myself, and I try to stay positive about it. But I do see the goose stepping happening here in the United States in a very, very subliminal way, and not
Yep.
necessarily in full speed, but it's definitely there. There's a shadowing presence here in the United States, and I used to
It's
call it the
growing.
black umbrella.
Yep. Yeah, the key is one of the keys is to just stay out of the healthcare system as much as you can, and to take care of yourself. Meditate, do yoga, eat right, walk through the woods. Get off the grid if you can. Grow your own food if you can, and take care of yourselves. And Dr. Joel Wallach, he's a writer, a friend of mine. And he's 76, and he hasn't been to the doctor in 52 years.
Awesome.
And he's a doctor, and he won't go to the doctor. And, because he knows what they're really all about. And he has a great book called Let's Play Doctor, in which he gives you how to cure things yourself. So you can fix yourself, and you got the internet, and we need to create our own breakaway civilization. And it's going to be nasty, but at the same time, there are groups forming all over the place that are doing this, and the people at the top are not going as fast as they like, and they know it. And so I don't know. There's part of me that really thinks that they would not be acting so desperate if they weren't really, really afraid. If they're really, really afraid, well, what are they really, really afraid of?
That's what I'm wondering. Or is there something coming back from deep space that's going to be taking them down?
Well, that's, of course, the rumor mill says that the Anunnaki or something are coming back to. They realize that the Anunnaki they left behind were not the best specimens of Anunnaki. They're coming back to fix their mistakes. Could be. I don't know. I'm highly dubious of those kinds of speculations.
Yeah, me too. Well, I always think. Yeah, I mean, I always think there's a bigger eye in the sky, nonetheless. But I would like to borrow the moon and take a trip.
Yeah, well, one day I kind of have a fantasy that one day a band of rebels, take over the moon, and then they turn it around and we get to see the other side, which is a really cool spaceship.
Wouldn't that be fun? Yeah, I'd be all psyched for that. And we're getting ready to wrap this up really quick. Before we do that, I want to make sure everybody knows how they can get in touch with you and how they can view your film. And I know there's a preview for it on YouTube, I believe, right?
Yeah, and go to either shastamovie.com or go to sacredmysteries.com, which is our company, and you can click through there, or you can go to YouTube and look it up also, and it's on YouTube. And so shastamovie.com is where you go to find out about Shasta. What we're trying to do is, because we don't think that anyone can actually distribute this film in the right way because they don't understand it, none of the Hollywood companies, and besides the fact that they screw everybody, we're trying to do a grassroots effort here to distribute this film ourselves. And I think we can do it because we have a history of it. And so we're going to theaters all across the country. And anybody out there who wants to help us with the grassroots effort, please just go to Sacred Mysteries, and or go to my website, Jay Weidner.Called. You can contact me from either one of those sites, and I will lead you to the right people. And if you know somebody has a theater in your town and would like to show it, you got a community that would like to see it, bookstores, whatever. I need all the help we can get. This is a group effort. They don't want this movie out, so that's why we have to do it. And so that's the first thing. SacredMysteries.com is where all of my DVDs are at, and all my weird and writings and free writings and high speculations are over at Jay Weidner, JayWeidner.com.
Fabulous. And Jay, what a pleasure it's been to have you on tonight. I really appreciate you coming on. Such a great deal of respect for you. You're a very wise man. And I know I could just sit there and talk to you for hour after hour because I know you have so much information. So,
well, thanks for having me on. I appreciate it.
Yeah, and also we're not quite finished here. We have about 10 minutes plus or minus left. But I did want to ask you real quick. I did catch you talking about the calcification of the pineal gland, and I think that's very critical for people to hear that. Or is there a way to decalcify it? I know there is. And exactly, what can you tell us about that?
Yeah, so what happens is, well, let's see how I start this. Okay, there was a Princeton study, I believe it was Princeton. Anyway, you can get the book, The Melatonin Miracle, and look this up yourself. There was a study, I think it's Princeton, where they took older rats and they cut the pineal glands out of younger rats and put them onto older rats. And the older rats began to reverse their aging process. They put old pineal glands in younger rats, and they aged and died within a day or two. And so they discovered, this is like 30 years ago now, that a young pineal gland put into a being will make that being young. Now that should give you all cause for wonder, if they're practicing any of this in real life. But we don't have to resort to stealing pineal glands and putting them back into our heads, because alchemy is the way in which you decalcify your pineal gland so that it becomes nice and young again, and then this reverses the aging process. We know this from the Princeton studies. So, I've been at this for about 30 years now. I know the pineal gland is the center of alchemy, and about 5 months ago, I was laying in bed one Saturday morning with all of my alchemy books, and I was trying to figure out something that had been bothering me for years. Alchemy and alchemy books are concerned with a lot of things, but what they're concerned with most, they're concerned with a lot of things. Two of the things they're concerned with are something that has to do with urine, yes, urine, what you pee, and the second one is collecting rainwater or dew. And I was in bed and I was trying to, what does urine and rainwater or dew have in common? And I thought about it, and all of a sudden I realized that they're both distilled waters. That urine is distilled water by the kidneys, and rainwater is distilled water by evaporation. Mm-hmm. And I got kind of amazed because I realized that there was only 3 ways that you could get distilled water. One was by urine, one was by rainwater, collecting rainwater, and the third was with a laboratory method. And I realized that was the third thing that alchemy was always talking about, some mysterious thing that you do in a lab, right, to get your fountain of life water, right? Well, when I realized that distilled water was the one thing that these things had in common, I got on the internet and began looking and studying, and there actually is a guy out there whose name suddenly escapes me, who talks about all this. You should probably have him on your show. His name is Norman something. He's from North Carolina. Very interesting guy. And so I read all about distilled water, and I realized that it was the secret of alchemy, or at least one of the secrets of alchemy. And what distilled water does, and I drink only distilled water, what it does is it pulls all the minerals, only though inorganic minerals. It does not pull organic minerals out of your body. So when you drink distilled water, it immediately rushes down through your arteries and your capillaries and through your heart, and it's sucking off all the plaque that's gathering around your arteries. It then goes into your brain and begins removing all the plaque in your brain, which is one of the major causes of dementia. And by the way, the major cause of heart attack is plaque in the aorta. And then it gets into your brain finally, and it sinks its way down into your pineal gland and begins decalcifying not just your pineal gland, but your entire endocrine system, going down to the pituitary gland, all the way down to the bottom. And so what this is it's a year-to-year thing. So if you discover and start drinking distilled water when you're 50, then it's going to take 10 years for you to look like you're 40, because it takes that long to reverse the damage. Mm-hmm. But you're talking about the number one reason for death, mm-hmm. which is the plaque building up. The proof that it's working is that I have no plaque on my teeth. I don't even really have to brush my teeth. I do anyway, but I don't need to anymore because there is 0 plaque on my teeth anymore. And I've been doing this now for 5 months. Wow. And so, and so people, there's naysayers like Dr. Oz, and some people say, "Oh, this is really dangerous. You shouldn't do it." So I don't recommend you do it. I mean, you call me in a year, and I'll tell you how I am. And so far so good, knock on wood. And so I believe that I have a 90% chance that this is the secret to what they're talking about, because I've read the books and I know what they say, and it makes sense. Mm-hmm. So I'm a big believer in distilled water, and to it's actually a very exciting subject. It's one I'm just new to now. So
yeah, that's very well. I love alchemy in general, and yeah, I'm very intrigued by that. And also, I drink a lot of spring water, so I'm not sure.
That would be the worst thing you could do.
Yeah, I'd probably switch. Yeah, okay, I'm going to try your experiment sometime and see how it works.
Yeah, you'd be very surprised by what's in the bottom of the distiller after you do tap water, especially where I live, and then heavy mineralized spring water. Mm-hmm. Wow, it leaves like a teaspoon of white powder salts in the bottom of the distiller.
What about El Dorado water? You know El Dorado, right?
Yeah, right. Yeah, that would do the same thing. I would not touch it.
Oh, bummer. Yeah. Okay, well, that's good to know. Didn't realize that. And of course, they did put the fluoride in the water for so long, and that doesn't help anything, I'm sure.
No, and the fluoride in the water, I mean, they have to know that what it's doing. Mm-hmm. And by the way, fluoride does not help your teeth. So the whole idea that it's helping your teeth is just BS. It doesn't help your teeth. How does taking minerals help your teeth? It actually causes plaque to grow on your teeth, which means you have to go to the dentist more often.
Oh my gosh! Yeah, when you think about it, yeah. And didn't they used to give it to the people in the concentration camps also?
Yeah. Fluoride is a terrible thing to give to anybody, and it should be immediately removed from all water. But you shouldn't be drinking it anyway. If you drink distilled water, all the fluoride's gone anyway. Not to mention the brown goo, which I don't know what it is. And so yeah, I recommend it, but again, I don't recommend it to anybody else. If you don't like it, it's fine. Disclaimer. But I do it, and I like it, and I think it tastes better than regular water.
Yeah, I'm going to try it. And have you done much with the monoatomic gold?
I've been a little afraid of it.
Yeah?
I think it might have some properties, but I'm kind of afraid of taking heavy doses of any kind of minerals or heavy metals or anything. I just don't know if it's a good thing. Okay. And so I'm afraid to take some of those silver things and the gold and.
Really? Well, that's interesting. Isn't that kind of atypical of alchemy, though? Because you would think that you would be introducing your body to more and more of the minerals and chemicals or whatever.
No, I don't think alchemy. I think that those are all either people that actually didn't really kind of understand alchemy, or smoke screens to hide what alchemy is really about, because they don't want people living to be 300 or 400 years old. And but it doesn't mean that, because there could be a whole science of alchemy that I don't know about, because I'm only after one aspect of alchemy, right? But there could be, just like there's physics and chemistry and astronomy, there could be all sorts of things going on in alchemy in the old days that are amazing and astonishing, and monatomic gold could be one of them.
Yeah, it's interesting.
I haven't gone down that path, that's all.
No, I haven't either. I'm still looking at it, but I always look at the transfiguration at the atomic level, and I always feel like it's all based on frequency and consciousness. I think that's the biggest form of alchemy, in my opinion.
It is. That's the real alchemy, and you can change that with doing mantras and chants and things, which is what the alchemists did while they're doing their experiments. They did these mantras and chants and doing these humming and creating frequencies and. But I will say this: the few months that I've been on the water, I'm one thing that has happened to me for sure, besides the deplaquing of my teeth, is I have really gotten psychic and frightening in some ways, where I'm anticipating words being spoken by people and concepts about to be voiced by people. I'm actually seeing it in my head before they do it.
Wow.
And I'm just sitting here quietly going, whoa.
Cool.
Whoa.
That's pretty good. That means your light body must really be kicking in online, huh?
Yeah, and that's what the pineal gland would do, because that's the seat of the soul. That's the connector between the worlds.
Absolutely.
So it's the third eye. It's,
That's what we are, that divine spark. Oh, it's beautiful.
Yeah, that's where it sits, right there.
Absolutely. Well, Jay, listen, we're getting ready to wrap this up, but thank you so much for being on the show tonight. It's been an honor to have you on. You are so wonderful. Hope to have you back because I didn't get to talk about some other topics, but hey, wish you all the best on that. And if I can help promote your work, you just let me know. And
thank you so much.
Yeah, thank everybody for tuning in tonight. I hope you enjoyed the show. I certainly did. And stay tuned for the Mallard Report that's coming up next. And of course, I want to thank my special producer, Keith Rowland, out there. And I think that's about it, everybody. So we're ready to. Thank you.